and a certain one was sick, Eleazar from Beit Anya, the village of Miriam and her sister Martha. Now it was Miriam who anointed the master with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Eleazar was sick. Therefore the sisters sent to him, saying, Master, see, he whom you love is sick. But when Yahushua heard, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the esteem of Elohim, so that the son of Elohim might be esteemed by it. Now Yahushua loved Martha and her sister and Eleazar. Therefore when he heard that he was sick, then indeed he stayed at the place where he was 2 more days. Then after this he said to the taught ones, Let us go back to Yehuda. The taught ones said to him, Rabbi, the Yehudim were but now seeking to stone you, and are you going back there? Yahushua answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. He said this, and after that he said to them, Our friend Eleazar has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. Therefore the taught one said to him, Master, if he has fallen asleep, he shall recover. But Yahushua had spoken about his death, whereas they thought that he spoke of taking rest in sleep. So then Yahushua said to them plainly, Eleazar has died, and for your sake I am glad I was not there in order for you to believe. But let us go to him. Tuama, who is called the twin, then said to his fellow taught ones, Let us also go, so that we die with him. Therefore, when Yahushua arrived, he found that he had already been 4 days in the tomb. Now Beit Anya was near Jerusalem, about 15 stadia away, and many of the Yehudim had come to Martha and Miriam to comfort them concerning their brother. Martha then, when she heard that Yahushua was coming, met him, but Miriam was sitting in the house. Martha then said to Yahushua, Master, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you might ask of Elohim, Elohim shall give you. Yahushua said to her, Your brother shall rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Yahushua said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he dies, he shall live. And everyone that is living and believing in me shall never die at all. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Master, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of Elohim, who is coming into the world. And having said this, she went away and called her sister Miriam secretly, saying, The teacher is here and calls you. When she heard, she rose up quickly and came to him. And Yahushua had not yet come into the village, but was in the place where Martha met him. Therefore the Yehudim, who were with her in the house, and were comforting her, when they saw that Miriam rose up quickly, and went out, followed her, saying, She is going to the tomb to weep there. Miriam therefore, when she came where Yahushua was, and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Master, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Yahushua therefore, when he saw her weeping, and the Yehudim who came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled, and said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Master, come and see. Yahushua wept. The Yehudim therefore said, See how he loved him. And some of them said, Was this one who opened the eyes of the blind not also able to prevent this one from dying? Yahushua therefore, again groaning in himself, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Yahushua said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who had died, said to him, Master, already he smells, for it is 4 days. Yahushua said to her, Did I not say to you that if you believe, you shall see the esteem of Elohim? So they took away the stone where the dead man was laid. And Yahushua lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me, and I know that you always hear me. But because of the crowd standing by, I said this, in order that they believe that you sent me. And when he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Eleazar, come out. And he who died came out, bound feet and hands with wrappings, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Yahushua said to them, Loosen him and let him go. Therefore many of the Yehudim who had come to Miriam and had seen what Yahushua did believed in him. But some of them went away to the Pharisees and told them what Yahushua did. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered a council and said, What shall we do? Because this man does many signs. If we let him alone like this, they all shall believe in him, and the Romans shall come and take away from us both our place and nation. And one of them, Caiaphas, being high priest that year, said to them, You know naught, neither do you consider that it is better for us that one man die for the people than the entire nation should perish. But he did not say this from himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Yahushua was about to die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but to gather together into one the children of Elohim who were scattered abroad. So from that day on they plotted to kill him. Yahushua therefore no longer went openly among the Yehudim, but went from there into the country near the wilderness to a city called Ephraim, and remained there with his taught ones. Now the Pesach of the Yehudim was near, and many went from the country up to Jerusalem before the Pesach to set themselves apart. And so they were seeking Yahushua, and spoke among one another, standing in the set-apart place, "What do you think? Is he not coming to the festival at all?" And both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a command, that if anyone knew where he was, he should disclose it in order for them to seize him. Then one of the 12, called Yehuda from Kirioth, went to the chief priests and said, "What would you give me to deliver him to you?" And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. And from then on he was seeking an occasion to deliver him up. And on the first day of unleavened bread, the taught ones came to Yahushua, saying to him, "Where do you wish us to prepare for you to eat the Pesach?" And he said, "Go into the city to a certain man, and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is near. I am to perform the Pesach at your house with my taught ones.'" And the taught ones did as Yahushua had ordered them, and prepared the Pesach. And on the first day of unleavened bread, when they were slaughtering the Pesach lamb, his taught ones said to him, "Where do you wish us to go and prepare for you to eat the Pesach?" And he sent out 2 of his taught ones and said to them, "Go into the city, and there a man bearing a jar of water shall meet you. Follow him, and wherever he enters, say to the master of the house, 'The teacher says, where is the guest room in which I am to eat the Pesach with my taught ones?' And he shall show you a large upper room furnished, ready. Prepare for us there." And his taught ones went out and came into the city, and found it as he said to them, and they prepared the Pesach. And he sent Kepha and Yochanan, saying, "Go and prepare the Pesach for us to eat." And they said to him, "Where do you wish us to prepare?" And he said to them, "See, as you enter into the city, a man shall meet you carrying a jar of water. Follow him into the house he enters, and you shall say to the master of the house, 'The teacher says to you, where is the guest room where I might eat the Pesach with my taught ones?' And he shall show you a large, furnished upper room. Prepare it there." And going, they found it as he had said to them, and they prepared the Pesach. And when evening came, he sat down with the 12. And while they were eating, he said, "Truly I say to you, one of you shall deliver me up." And they were deeply grieved, and began to say to him, each of them, "Master, is it I?" And he answering said, "He who has dipped his hand with me in the dish, he shall deliver me up. Indeed, the son of Adam goes, as it has been written concerning him. But woe to that man by whom the son of Adam is delivered up. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born." And Yehuda, he who delivered him up, answering, said, Rabbi, is it I? He said to him, You have said it. And as they were eating, Yahushua took bread, and having blessed, broke and gave it to the taught ones, and said, Take, eat, this is my body. And taking the cup and giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying, Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood, that of the renewed covenant, which is shed for many for the forgiveness of sins. But I say to you, I shall certainly not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on, till that day when I drink it anew with you in the reign of my Father. And evening having come, he came with the 12. And as they sat and ate, Yahushua said, Truly I say to you, one of you who is eating with me shall deliver me up. And they began to be grieved, and to say to him one by one, Is it I? And another, Is it I? And he answering said to them, It is one of the 12, he who is dipping with me in the dish. The Son of Adam is indeed going, as it has been written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Adam is delivered up. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born. And as they were eating, Yahushua took bread, having blessed, broke it, gave it to them, and said, Take, eat, this is my body. And taking the cup, giving thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank from it. And he said to them, This is my blood, that of the renewed covenant, which is shed for many. Truly I say to you, I shall certainly no more drink of the fruit of the vine, till that day when I drink it anew in the reign of Elohim. And having sung a song, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Yahushua said to them, All of you shall stumble in me this night, for it has been written, I shall strike the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. But after I am raised, I shall go before you to Galilee. And Kepha said to him, Even if all shall stumble, yet not I. And Yahushua said to him, Truly I say to you that today, this night, before the cock shall crow twice, you shall deny me 3 times. But he spoke more strongly, If I have to die with you, I shall not deny you. And they all said the same. And when the hour had come, he sat down, and the 12 emissaries with him. And he said to them, With desire I have desired to eat this Pesach with you before my suffering. For I say to you, I shall certainly not eat of it again until it is filled in the reign of Elohim. And taking the cup, giving thanks, he said, Take this and divide it among yourselves. For I say to you, I shall certainly not drink of the fruit of the vine until the reign of Elohim comes. And taking bread, giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, This is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Likewise the cup also, after supper, saying, This cup is the renewed covenant in my blood, which is shed for you. But see, the hand of him delivering me up is with me on the table. For indeed the Son of Adam goes as it has been decreed, but woe to that man by whom he is delivered up. And they began to ask among themselves, which of them it could be who was about to do this. And there also took place a dispute among them, as to which of them seemed to be greater. And he said to them, The sovereigns of the nations rule over them, and those who control them are called workers of good. But not so with you, but let him who is greatest among you be as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves. For who is greater, the one who sits at the table, or the one who serves? Is it not the one who sits at the table? But I am in your midst as the one who serves. But you are those who have remained with me in my trials. And I covenant for you, as my Father covenanted for me, a reign, to eat and drink at my table, in my reign, and to sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And the Master said, Shimon, Shimon, see, Satan has asked for you to sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, that your belief should not fail. And when you have turned, strengthen your brothers. And he said to him, Master, I am prepared to go with you, both to prison and to death. And he said, I say to you, Kepha, the cock shall not crow at all today until you have denied 3 times that you know me. And he said to them, When I sent you without purse and bag and sandals, did you lack any? And they said, None at all. And he said to them, But now, let him who has a purse take it, likewise also a bag, and let him who has no sword sell his garment and buy one. For I say to you that what has been written has yet to be accomplished in me. And he was reckoned with lawless ones, for that which refers to me has an end too. And they said, Master, look, here are 2 swords. But he said to them, That is enough. And having sung a song, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Yahushua said to them, All of you shall stumble in me this night, for it has been written, I shall strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered. But after I have been raised, I shall go before you into Galilee. And Kepha answering said to him, Even if all stumble in you, I shall never stumble. Yahushua said to him, Truly I say to you that this night, before the cock crows, you shall deny me 3 times. Kepha said to him, Even if I have to die with you, I shall not deny you. All the taught ones said the same too. Then Yahushua came with them to a place called Gethsemane, and said to the taught ones, Sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took with him Kepha and the 2 sons of Zabdi, and he began to be grieved and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, My being is exceedingly grieved, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. And going forward a little, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I desire, but as you desire. And he came to the taught ones, and found them asleep, and said to Kepha, So were you not able to watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into trial. The spirit indeed is eager, but the flesh is weak. Again he went away a second time, and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it is impossible for this to pass unless I drink it, let your desire be done. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them, went away again, and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same words. Then he came to his taught ones, and said to them, Still sleeping and taking rest? See, the hour has come near, and the Son of Adam is delivered up into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. See, he who delivers me up has come near. Yahushua said these words, and lifted up his eyes to the heaven, and said, Father, the hour has come. Esteem your Son, so that your Son also might esteem you, as you have given him authority over all flesh, that he should give everlasting life to all whom you have given him. And this is everlasting life, that they should know you, the one true Elohim, and Yahushua Messiah, whom you have sent. I have esteemed you on the earth, having accomplished the work you have given me that I should do. And now, esteem me with yourself, Father, with the esteem which I had with you before the world was. I have revealed your name to the men whom you gave me out of the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they have guarded your word. Now they have come to know that all you gave to me is from you, because the words which you gave to me I have given to them, and they have received them, and have truly known that I came forth from you, and they believed that you sent me. I pray for them. I do not pray for the world, but for those whom you have given me, for they are yours, and all mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I have been esteemed in them. And I am no more in the world, but these are in the world, and I come to you. Set apart, Father, guard them in your name which you have given me, so that they might be one as we are. When I was with them in the world, I was guarding them in your name which you have given me, and I watched over them. And not one of them perished, except the son of destruction, that the scripture might be filled. And now I come to you, and I speak these words in the world, so that they have my joy completed in them. I have given them your word, and the world hated them because they are not of the world, as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the wicked one. They are not of the world, as I am not of the world. Set them apart in your truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, I also sent them into the world. And for them I set myself apart, so that they too might be set apart in truth. And I do not pray for these alone, but also for those believing in me through their word, so that they also might be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, so that they too might be one in us, so that the world might believe that you have sent me. And the esteem which you gave me I have given them, so that they might be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, so that they might be perfected into one, so that the world knows that you have sent me, and have loved them as you have loved me. Father, I desire that those whom you have given me might be with me where I am, so that they see my esteem which you have given me, because you loved me before the foundation of the world. O righteous Father, indeed the world did not know you, but I knew you, and these knew that you sent me. And I have made your name known to them, and shall make it known, so that the love with which you loved me might be in them, and I in them. And while he was still speaking, see, Yehuda, one of the 12, with a large crowd with swords and clubs, came from the chief priests and the elders of the people. And he who was delivering him up gave them a sign, saying, Whomever I kiss, it is he, seize him. And going straight up to Yahushua, he said, Greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. And Yahushua said to him, Friend, why have you come? Then they came and laid hands on Yahushua and seized him. And look, one of those with Yahushua put out his hand and drew his sword, and striking the servant of the high priest, he cut off his ear. Then Yahushua said to him, Return your sword to its place, for all who take the sword shall die by the sword. Or do you think that I am not able to pray to my Father now, and he shall provide me with more than 12 legions of messengers? How then would the scriptures be filled, that it has to be this way? In that hour Yahushua said to the crowds, Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to arrest me? Daily I sat with you, teaching in the set-apart place, and you did not seize me. But all this came to be so that the scriptures of the prophets might be filled. Then all the taught ones left him and fled. And they came to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his taught ones, Sit here while I pray. And he took with him Kepha and Yaakov and Yochanan, and he began to be greatly amazed, and to be deeply distressed. And he said to them, My being is exceedingly grieved, even to death. Stay here and watch. And he went on a little and fell on the ground, and was praying that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, Abba, Father, all is possible for you. Make this cup pass from me, yet not what I desire, but what you desire. And he came and found them sleeping, and said to Kepha, Shimon, are you sleeping? You were not able to watch 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into trial. The spirit indeed is eager, but the flesh is weak. And again he went away and prayed, and spoke the same words. And having returned, he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy, and they did not know what to answer him. And he came the third time, and said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? It is enough, the hour has come. See, the Son of Adam is being delivered up into the hands of the sinners. Rise up, let us go. See, he who is delivering me up has drawn near. And immediately, while he was still speaking, Yehuda, one of the 12, with a large crowd with swords and clubs, came from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. And the one who was delivering him up had given them a signal, saying, Whomever I kiss, it is he. Seize him and lead him away safely. And coming, going straight up to him, he said to him, Rabbi, Rabbi, and kissed him. And they laid their hands on him and seized him. And one of those standing by drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Yahushua answering said to them, Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to take me? Daily I was with you in the set-apart place teaching, and you did not seize me, but let the scriptures be filled. And they all left him and fled. And coming out, he went out to the Mount of Olives, according to usage, and his taught ones also followed him. And coming to the place, he said to them, Pray that you do not enter into trial. And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, and falling on his knees, he was praying, saying, Father, if it be your counsel, remove this cup from me. Yet not my desire, but let yours be done. And there appeared a messenger from heaven to him, strengthening him. And being in agony, he was praying more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. And rising up from prayer and coming to his taught ones, he found them sleeping from grief. And he said to them, Why do you sleep? Rise and pray, lest you enter into trial. And while he was still speaking, see, a crowd. And he who was called Yehuda, one of the 12, was going before them, and came near to Yahushua to kiss him. And Yahushua said to him, Yehuda, do you deliver up the Son of Adam with a kiss? And those around him, seeing what was about to take place, said to him, Master, shall we strike with the sword? And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, and cut off his right ear. But Yahushua answering said, Allow it this far. And touching his ear, he healed him. And Yahushua said to those who had come against him, the chief priests and captains of the set-apart place and the elders, Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs? While I was with you daily in the set-apart place, you did not lay hands on me. But this is your hour and the authority of darkness. Having said these words, Yahushua went out with his taught ones beyond the Kidron torrent, where there was a garden into which he and his taught ones entered. And Yehuda, who delivered him up, also knew the place, because Yahushua often met there with his taught ones. Yehuda then, having received the company of soldiers and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Yahushua then, knowing all that would come upon him, went forward and said to them, Whom do you seek? They answered him, Yahushua of Nazareth. Yahushua said to them, I am. And Yehuda, who delivered him up, was also standing with them. When therefore he said to them, I am, they drew back and fell to the ground. Once more he asked them, Whom do you seek? And they said, Yeshua of Nazareth. Yeshua answered, I said to you that I am. If then you seek me, allow these to go, in order that the word might be filled, which he spoke, Of those whom you have given me, I have lost none. Then Shimon Kepha, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, and cut off his right ear, and the servant's name was Melech. Then Yeshua said to Kepha, Put your sword into the sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which my Father has given me? And a certain young man was following him, having a linen cloth thrown around his naked body. And when they seized him, he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. And when he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Eleazar, come out. And he who died came out, bound feet and hands with wrappings, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Yeshua said to them, Loosen him and let him go. Then the company of soldiers, and the commander, and the officers of the Yehudim seized Yeshua and bound him, and they led him away to Hanan first, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. Now Caiaphas was the one who gave counsel to the Yehudim that it was better that one man should die for the people. And those who had seized Yeshua led him away to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were gathered together. But Kepha followed him at a distance to the courtyard of the high priest, and he went in and sat with the servants to see the end. And the chief priests and the elders and all the council were seeking false witness against Yeshua to put him to death, but found none. Although many false witnesses came forward, they found none. But at last 2 false witnesses came forward and said, This one said, I am able to destroy the dwelling place of Elohim and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest stood up and said to him, Have you no answer to make? What do these witness against you? But Yeshua remained silent. So the high priest said to him, I put you to oath by the living Elohim, that you say to us if you are the Messiah, the Son of Elohim. Yeshua said to him, You have said it. Besides, I say to you, from now on you shall see the Son of Adam sitting at the right hand of the power, and coming on the clouds of the heaven. Then the high priest tore his garments, saying, He has blasphemed. Why do we need any more witnesses? See, now you have heard this blasphemy. What do you think? And they answering said, He is liable to death. Then they spat in his face and beat him, and others slapped him, saying, Prophesy to us, Messiah, who is the one who struck you? And they led Yeshua away to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes came together to him. and Kepha followed him at a distance, even into the courtyard of the high priest. And he was sitting with the officers and warming himself at the fire. And the chief priests and all the council were seeking witness against Yahushua to put him to death, and they were finding none. For many bore false witness against him, but their evidences did not agree. And some rose up and bore false witness against him, saying, We heard him saying, I shall destroy this dwelling place that is made with hands, and within 3 days I shall build another made without hands. And not even then did their witness agree. Then the high priest stood up in the center and asked Yahushua, saying, Have you no answer to make? What do these witness against you? But he remained silent and gave no answer. Again the high priest asked him, saying to him, Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed? And Yahushua said, I am, and you shall see the Son of Adam sitting at the right hand of the power, and coming with the clouds of the heaven. And tearing his garments, the high priest said, What further need do we have of witnesses? You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? And they all condemned him to be liable to death. And some began to spit on him, and to blindfold him, and to beat him, and to say to him, Prophesy. And the officers struck him with the palms of their hands. And Shimon Kepha followed Yahushua with another taught one, and that taught one was known to the high priest, and went with Yahushua into the courtyard of the high priest. But Kepha was standing outside at the door. So the other taught one, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to her who kept the door, and brought Kepha in. Then the servant girl who kept the door said to Kepha, Are you also one of this man's taught ones? He said, I am not. And the servants and officers who had made a fire of coals stood there, because it was cold, and they warmed themselves, and Kepha was standing with them and warming himself. And the men who were holding Yahushua were mocking him, beating him, and having blindfolded him, they were striking him on the face, and were asking him, saying, Prophesy, who is it that struck you? And they said to him much more, blaspheming. And when it became day, the elders of the people, both chief priests and scribes, came together, and they led him into their council, saying, If you are the Messiah, say it to us. And he said to them, If I say to you, you would not believe it at all. And if I asked you, you would not answer me at all. From now on the Son of Adam shall sit on the right hand of the power of Elohim. And they all said, Are you then the Son of Elohim? And he said to them, You say that I am. And they said, Why do we need further witness? For we heard it ourselves from his mouth. Then the high priest asked Yahushua about his taught ones and his teaching. Yahushua answered him, I spoke openly to the world. I always taught in the congregation and in the set-apart place, where the Yehudim always meet. And I spoke no word in secret. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I said to them. See, they know what I said. And when he had said this, one of the officers who stood by slapped Yahushua in the face, saying, Do you answer the high priest this way? Yahushua answered him, If I have spoken evilly, bear witness of the evil, but if well, why do you strike me? Then Hanan sent him bound to the high priest Caiaphas, and Shimon Kepha was standing and warming himself. Then they said to him, Are you also one of his taught ones? He denied it and said, I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the one whose ear Kepha cut off, said, Did I not see you in the garden with him? Then Kepha again denied it, and immediately a cock crowed. Then they led Yahushua from Caiaphas to the palace, and it was early, and they themselves did not go into the palace, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Pesach. Pilate therefore came out to them and said, What accusation do you bring against this man? They answered and said to him, If he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you. Then Pilate said to them, You take him and judge him according to your law. The Yehudim said to him, It is not right for us to put anyone to death, in order that the word of Yahushua might be filled which he spoke, signifying by what death he was about to die. Then Pilate went back into the palace and called Yahushua and said to him, Are you the sovereign of the Yehudim? Yahushua answered him, Do you say this from yourself, or did others talk to you about me? Pilate answered, Am I a Yehudi? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What did you do? Yahushua answered, My reign is not of this world. If my reign were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I should not be delivered to the Yehudim. But now my reign is not from here. Then Pilate said to him, You are a sovereign then? Yahushua answered, You say it because I am a sovereign. For this I was born, and for this I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. Pilate said to him, What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again to the Yehudim and said to them, I find no guilt in him. But you have a habit that I shall release someone to you at the Pesach. Do you wish then that I release to you the sovereign of the Yehudim? Then they all shouted again, saying, Not this one, but Bar-Abba. And Bar-Abba was a robber. And Kepha sat outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him, saying, And you were with Yahushua of Galilee. But he denied it before them all, saying, I do not know what you say. And as he was going out into the porch, another girl saw him and said to those there, And this one was with Yahushua of Nazareth. But again he denied with an oath, I do not know the man. And after a while those who stood by came to him and said to Kepha, Truly you are one of them too, for even your speech gives you away. Then he began to curse and to swear, saying, I do not know the man. And immediately a cock crowed. And Kepha remembered the word of Yahushua, who had said to him, Before a cock crows, you shall deny me 3 times. And going out, he wept bitterly. And as Kepha was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came, and seeing Kepha warming himself, she looked at him and said, And you were with Yahushua of Nazareth. But he denied it, saying, I do not know nor understand what you are saying. And he went out onto the porch, and a cock crowed. And the servant girl saw him again, and began to say to those who stood by, This is one of them. And again he was denying it. And after a little while those who stood by again said to Kepha, Truly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean too, and your speech is alike. And he began to curse and swear, I do not know this man of whom you speak. And a second time the cock crowed. And Kepha remembered the word that Yahushua had said to him, Before the cock crows twice, you shall deny me 3 times. And thinking on it, he wept. And having seized him, they led him and brought him to the house of the high priest. And Kepha was following at a distance. And when they had lit a fire in the midst of the courtyard, and sat down together, Kepha sat among them. And a servant girl, seeing him, as he sat by the fire, looked intently at him and said, And this one was with him. But he denied him, saying, Woman, I do not know him. And after a little while another saw him and said, You are one of them too. But Kepha said, Man, I am not. And about an hour later another insisted, saying, Truly, this one was with him too, for he is a Galilean too. But Kepha said, Man, I do not know what you are saying. And immediately, while he was still speaking, a cock crowed. And the master turned and looked at Kepha. And Kepha remembered the word of the master, how he had said to him, Before a cock crows, you shall deny me 3 times. And Kepha went out and wept bitterly. And Shimon Kepha was standing and warming himself. Then they said to him, Are you also one of his taught ones? He denied it and said, I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of the one whose ear Kepha cut off, said, Did I not see you in the garden with him? Then Kepha again denied it, and immediately a cock crowed. And morning having come, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Yahushua, so as to put him to death. And having bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate the governor. Then Yehuda, he who delivered him up, having seen that he had been condemned, repented, returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and to the elders, saying, I have sinned in delivering up innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? You see to it. And throwing down the pieces of silver in the dwelling place, he left, and went and hanged himself. And the chief priests took the silver pieces and said, It is not right to put them into the treasury, seeing they are the price of blood. So they took counsel, and bought with them the potter's field, for the burial of strangers. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood until today. Then was filled what was spoken by Zechariah the prophet, saying, And they took 30 pieces of silver, the price of him who was pierced, on whom they of the children of Israel set a price, and gave them for the potter's field, as Yahweh had ordered me. And Yahushua stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Are you the sovereign of the Yehudim? And Yahushua stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Are you the sovereign of the Yehudim? And Yahushua said to him, You say it. And as he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he answered not. Then Pilate said to him, Do you not hear how much they witness against you? And he did not answer him, not one word, so that the governor wondered much. And immediately in the morning the chief priests had a council meeting with the elders and scribes and all the council. Having bound Yahushua, they led him away and delivered him to Pilate. And Pilate asked him, Are you the sovereign of the Yehudim? And he answering said to him, You say it. And the chief priests accused him of much, but he made no answer. And Pilate again asked him, saying, Have you no answer? See how much they witness against you. But Yahushua still gave no answer, so that Pilate marveled. And the entire assembly of them, having risen up, led him to Pilate, and began to accuse him, saying, We found this one perverting the nation, and forbidding to pay taxes to Caesar, saying, that he himself is Messiah, a sovereign. And Pilate asked him, saying, Are you the sovereign of the Yehudim? And answering him, he said, You say it. And Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowd, I find no guilt in this man. But they were insisting, saying, He stirs up the people, teaching through all Yehudah, beginning from Galilee unto this place. And when Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked if the man were a Galilean. And when he learned that he was under the authority of Herodes, he sent him to Herodes, who was also in Jerusalem in those days. And seeing Yahushua, Herodes rejoiced greatly. For a long time he had wished to see him, because he had heard much about him, and was anticipating to see some miracle done by him, and was questioning him with many words, but he gave him no answer. And the chief priests and the scribes stood accusing him intensely. And Herodes, with his soldiers, made light of him and mocked him, dressing him in a splendid robe, and sent him back to Pilate. And on that day Pilate and Herodes became friends with each other, for before that they had been at enmity with each other. And Pilate, having called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said to them, You brought this man to me as one who turns away the people. And look, I have examined him in your presence, and have found no guilt in this man regarding the charges which you make against him. And neither did Herodes, for I sent you back to him, and look, he has done none at all deserving death. Having disciplined him then, I shall release him, for he had to release one of them at the festival. Then they led Yahushua from Caiaphas to the palace, and it was early, and they themselves did not go into the palace, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Pesach. Pilate therefore came out to them and said, What accusation do you bring against this man? They answered and said to him, If he were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him up to you. Then Pilate said to them, You take him and judge him according to your law. The Yehudim said to him, It is not right for us to put anyone to death, in order that the word of Yahushua might be filled which he spoke, signifying by what death he was about to die. Then Pilate went back into the palace and called Yahushua and said to him, Are you the sovereign of the Yehudim? Yahushua answered him, Do you say this from yourself, or did others talk to you about me? Pilate answered, Am I a Yehudi? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What did you do? Yahushua answered, My reign is not of this world. If my reign were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I should not be delivered to the Yehudim. But now my reign is not from here. Then Pilate said to him, You are a sovereign then? Yahushua answered, You say it, because I am a sovereign. For this I was born, and for this I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. Pilate said to him, What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again to the Yehudim and said to them, I find no guilt in him. But you have a habit that I shall release someone to you at the Pesach. Do you wish then that I release to you the sovereign of the Yehudim? Then they all shouted again, saying, Not this one, but Barabbas. And Barabbas was a robber. And at the festival, the governor used to release to the crowd one prisoner whom they wished. And they had then a well-known prisoner called Barabbas. So when they were assembled, Pilate said to them, Whom do you wish I release to you, Barabbas or Yahushua, who is called Messiah? For he knew that because of envy they had delivered him up. And as he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, Have none at all to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much today in a dream because of him. But the chief priests and elders persuaded the crowds that they should ask for Barabbas and to destroy Yahushua. And the governor answering said to them, Which of the two do you wish I release to you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate said to them, What then shall I do with Yahushua, who is called Messiah? They all said to him, Let him be impaled. And the governor said, Indeed, what evil has he done? And they were crying out all the more, saying, Let him be impaled. And at a festival he released to them one prisoner, whomever they were asking. And there was one called Barabbas, chained with his fellow rebels, who had committed murder in the uprising. And the crowd, crying aloud, began to ask, as he had always done for them. But Pilate answered them, saying, Do you wish me to release for you the sovereign of the Yehudim? For he knew that the chief priests had handed him over because of envy. And the chief priests stirred up the crowd, that he should rather release Barabbas to them. And Pilate answered and again said to them, What then do you wish me to do to him, whom you call the sovereign of the Yehudim? And again they cried out, Impale him. And Pilate said to them, Why, what evil has he done? And they vehemently cried out, Impale him. And Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas to them, and having whipped him, he delivered Yahushua over to be impaled. And they cried out all together, saying, Away with this one, and release to us Barabbas, who had been thrown into prison for a certain uprising made in the city and for murder. Wishing to release Yahushua then, Pilate appealed to them again. But they were calling out, saying, Impale, impale him. And he said to them the third time, Why, what evil has he done? I have found no reason for death in him. Having disciplined him then, I shall release him. But with loud voices they insisted, asking for him to be impaled. And the voices of these men and of the chief priests were prevailing. And Pilate pronounced sentence that what they asked should be done. And he released the one they asked for, who for uprising and murder had been thrown into prison. But he handed Yahushua over to their wishes. And when Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but rather an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this righteous one. You shall see to it. And all the people answering said, His blood be upon us and on our children. Then he released Barabbas to them, but having Yahushua whipped, he delivered him over to be impaled. And at a festival he released to them one prisoner, whomever they were asking. And there was one called Barabbas, chained with his fellow rebels, who had committed murder in the uprising. And the crowd, crying aloud, began to ask, as he had always done for them. But Pilate answered them, saying, Do you wish me to release for you the sovereign of the Yehudim? For he knew that the chief priests had handed him over because of envy. And the chief priests stirred up the crowd, that he should rather release Barabbas to them. And Pilate answered and again said to them, What then do you wish me to do to him, whom you call the sovereign of the Yehudim? And again they cried out, Impale him. And Pilate said to them, Why, what evil has he done? And they vehemently cried out, Impale him. And Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas to them, and having whipped him, he delivered Yahushua over to be impaled. And they cried out all together, saying, Away with this one, and release to us Barabbas, who had been thrown into prison for a certain uprising made in the city and for murder. Wishing to release Yahushua then, Pilate appealed to them again. But they were calling out, saying, Impale, impale him. And he said to them the third time, Why, what evil has he done? I have found no reason for death in him. Having disciplined him then, I shall release him. But with loud voices they insisted, asking for him to be impaled. And the voices of these men and of the chief priests were prevailing. And Pilate pronounced sentence that what they asked should be done. And he released the one they asked for, who for uprising and murder had been thrown into prison. But he handed Yahushua over to their wishes. Then Pilate went back into the palace and called Yahushua and said to him, Are you the sovereign of the Yehudim? Yahushua answered him, Do you say this from yourself, or did others talk to you about me? Pilate answered, Am I a Yehudi? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. "What did you do?" Yahushua answered, "My reign is not of this world. If my reign were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I should not be delivered to the Yehudim. But now my reign is not from here." Then Pilate said to him, "You are a sovereign then?" Yahushua answered, "You say it because I am a sovereign. For this I was born, and for this I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And when he had said this, he went out again to the Yehudim and said to them, "I find no guilt in him. But you have a habit that I shall release someone to you at the Pesach. Do you wish then that I release to you the sovereign of the Yehudim?" Then they all shouted again, saying, "Not this one, but Bar-Abba." And Bar-Abba was a robber. Then the soldiers of the governor took Yahushua into the court and gathered the entire company of soldiers around him. And having stripped him, they put a scarlet robe on him, and plaiting a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and a reed in his right hand. And they kneeled down before him and mocked him, saying, "Greetings, sovereign of the Yehudim." And spitting on him, they took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they took the robe off him, then put his own garments on him, and led him away to be impaled. And the soldiers led him away into the court, which is the palace, and they called together the entire company of soldiers, and decked him with purple, and they plaited a crown of thorns, put it on him, and they began to call out to him, "Greetings, sovereign of the Yehudim." And they kept beating him on the head with a reed, and were spitting on him. And bending the knee, they were bowing down to him. And when they had mocked him, they took the purple off him, and put his own garments on him, and led him out to impale him. Then therefore Pilate took Yahushua and flogged him. And the soldiers plaited a crown of thorns, and placed it on his head, and they put a purple robe on him, and came to him and said, "Greetings, sovereign of the Yehudim," and they slapped him in the face. And Pilate went outside again and said to them, "See, I am bringing him out to you, to let you know that I find no guilt in him." Then Yahushua came outside, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said to them, "See the man." So when the chief priests and officers saw him, they shouted, saying, "Impale, impale." Pilate said to them, "You take him and impale him, for I find no guilt in him." The Yehudim answered him, "We have a law, and according to our law he ought to die, for he has made himself the son of Elohim." So when Pilate heard this, he was more afraid, and went back into the palace and asked Yahushua, "Where are you from?" But Yahushua gave him no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not speak to me? Do you not know that I possess authority to impale you, and I possess authority to release you?" Yahushua answered, "You would possess no authority against me if it were not given you from above. Because of this, he who delivered me to you has greater sin." From then on, Pilate was seeking to release him, but the Yehudim shouted, saying, "If you release this one, you are not Caesar's friend. Everyone who makes himself a sovereign does speak against Caesar." Therefore, when Pilate heard these words, he brought Yahushua out, and sat down in the judgment seat, in a place that is called Pavement, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha. And it was preparation day of the Pesach week, and about the 6th hour. And he said to the Yehudim, "See, your sovereign." But they shouted, "Away, away, impale him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I impale your sovereign?" The chief priests answered, "We have no sovereign except Caesar." And as they were going out, they found a man of Cyrene, Shimon by name. They compelled him to bear his stake. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, that is to say, place of a skull, they gave him wine mixed with bile to drink. And after tasting, he would not drink it. And having impaled him, they divided his garments, casting lots, that it might be filled what was spoken by the prophet. They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. And sitting down, they guarded him there, and they put up over his head the written charge against him, "This is Yahushua, the sovereign of the Yehudim." Then 2 robbers were impaled with him, one on the right and another on the left. And those passing by were blaspheming him, shaking their heads, and saying, "You who destroy the dwelling place and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the son of Elohim, come down from the stake." And likewise the chief priests, with the scribes and elders, mocking, said, "He saved others, he is unable to save himself. If he is the sovereign of Israel, let him now come down from the stake, and we shall believe him. He trusted in Elohim, let him rescue him now if he desires him, for he said, I am the son of Elohim." and also the robbers who were impaled with him reviled him, saying the same. And they compelled a passer-by, Shimon, a Cyrenian, coming from a field, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to bear his stake. And they brought him to the place Golgotha, which is translated, place of a skull. And they were giving him wine mixed with myrrh to drink, but he did not take it. And when they impaled him, they divided his garments, casting lots for them, what each one should take. And it was the 3rd hour, and they impaled him. And the inscription of his accusation was written above, the sovereign of the Yehudim. And with him they impaled 2 robbers, one on his right and the other on his left. And the scripture was filled, which says, And he was reckoned with the lawless. And those passing by were blaspheming him, shaking their heads and saying, Ah, you who destroy the dwelling place and build it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the stake. And likewise the chief priests and the scribes, mocking to one another, said, He saved others, he is unable to save himself. The Messiah, the sovereign of Israel, come down now from the stake, so that we see and believe. And those who were impaled with him were reproaching him. And as they led him away, they laid hold of a certain man, Shimon, a Cyrenian, who was coming from the field, and they put the stake on him to bear it behind Yeshua. And a great number of the people were following him, and women who also were mourning and lamenting him. But Yeshua, turning to them, said, Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For look, days are coming in which they shall say, Blessed are the barren and wombs that never bore, and the breasts which never nursed. Then they shall begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, Cover us. Because if they do this to the green tree, what is going to be done to the dry tree? And 2 others also, evildoers, were led with him to be put to death. And when they had come to the place called Golgotha, they impaled him there, and the evildoers, one on the right and the other on the left. And Yeshua said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And they divided his garments and cast lots. And the people were standing, looking on, and the rulers also were sneering with them, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the Messiah, the chosen of Elohim. And the soldiers were mocking him too, coming and offering him sour wine, and saying, If you are the sovereign of the Yehudim, save yourself. And there was also an inscription written over him in letters of Greek, and Roman, and Hebrew, This is the sovereign of the Yehudim. And one of the evildoers who were hanged was speaking evil of him, saying, If you are the Messiah, save yourself and us. But the other, responding, rebuked him, saying, Do you not even fear Elohim, since you are under the same judgment? And we, indeed, rightly so, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this one has done no wrong. And he said to Yeshua, Master, remember me when you come into your reign. And Yeshua said to him, Truly I say to you, Today you shall be with me in paradise. At that time then he delivered him to them to be impaled, and they took Yeshua and led him away. And bearing his stake he went out to the so-called place of a skull, which is called in Hebrew Golgotha, where they impaled him, and 2 others with him, one on this side and one on that side, and Yeshua in the middle. And Pilate wrote a title too, and put it on the stake, and it was written, Yeshua of Nazareth, the sovereign of the Yehudim. Many of the Yehudim therefore read this title, for the place where Yeshua was impaled was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, in Greek, in Roman. So the chief priests of the Yehudim said to Pilate, Do not write, the sovereign of the Yehudim, but he said, I am the sovereign of the Yehudim. Pilate answered, What I have written, I have written. Then the soldiers, when they had impaled Yeshua, took his outer garments and made 4 parts, to each soldier a part, and the inner garment. But the inner garment was without seam, woven from the top in one piece. So they said to each other, Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it, whose it shall be, in order that the scripture might be filled, which says, They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. The soldiers therefore indeed did this. And by the stake of Yeshua stood his mother and his mother's sister, Miriam, the wife of Clophas, and Miriam from Magdala. Then Yeshua, seeing his mother and the taught one whom he loved standing by, he said to his mother, Woman, see your son. Then to the taught one he said, See your mother. And from that hour that taught one took her to his own home. And from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land, until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Yeshua cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, that is, my El, "Why have you forsaken me?" Some of those standing there, having heard, said, "This one calls Eliyahu." And immediately one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with sour wine and put it on a reed and gave it to him to drink. But the rest said, "Leave it, let us see if Eliyahu comes to save him." And Yahushua cried out again with a loud voice and gave up his spirit. And see, the veil of the dwelling place was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth was shaken, and the rocks were split, and the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the set-apart ones who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the set-apart city and appeared to many. And when the captain and those with him who were guarding Yahushua saw the earthquake and all that took place, they feared exceedingly, saying, "Truly this was the Son of Elohim." And many women who followed Yahushua from Galilee, attending him, were there watching from a distance, among whom were Miriam from Magdala, and Miriam the mother of Yaakov and Joseph, and the mother of Zabdi's sons. And when the 6th hour came, darkness came over all the land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour Yahushua cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which is translated, my El, why have you forsaken me?" And some of those standing by, when they heard it, said, "See, he is calling for Eliyahu." And someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine and put it on a reed and offered it to him to drink, saying, "Leave him, let us see if Eliyahu does come to take him down." And Yahushua cried out with a loud voice and breathed his last. And the veil of the dwelling place was torn in two from top to bottom. And when the captain, who was standing opposite him, saw that he cried out like this and breathed his last, he said, "Truly this man was the Son of Elohim." And there were also women watching from a distance, among whom was also Miriam from Magdala, and Miriam the mother of Yaakov the Less, and of Joseph and Shaloma, who also followed him and attended him when he was in Galilee, and many other women who came up with him to Jerusalem. And it was now about the 6th hour, and darkness came over all the land until the 9th hour. And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the dwelling place was torn in two. And crying out with a loud voice, Yahushua said, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." And having said this, he breathed his last. And the captain, seeing what took place, praised Elohim, saying, "Truly this man was righteous." And when all the crowds who had gathered to that sight saw what took place, they beat their breasts and went away. And all those who knew him, and the women who followed him from Galilee, stood at a distance watching this. After this, Yahushua, knowing that all had been accomplished, in order that the scripture might be accomplished, said, "I thirst." A bowl of sour wine stood there, and they filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on hyssop, and held it to his mouth. So when Yahushua took the sour wine, he said, "It has been accomplished," and bowing his head, he gave up his spirit. And Yahushua cried out again with a loud voice and gave up his spirit. And see, the veil of the dwelling place was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth was shaken, and the rocks were split, and the tombs were opened. Therefore, since it was the preparation day, that the body should not remain on the stake on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath was a high one, the Yehudim asked Pilate to have their legs broken, and that they be taken away. Therefore the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first, and of the other who was impaled with him. But when they came to Yahushua and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. But one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and instantly blood and water came out. And he who has seen has witnessed, and his witness is true, and he knows that he is speaking the truth, in order that you might believe. For this took place in order for the scripture to be filled, "Not one of his bones shall be broken." And again another scripture says, "They shall look on him whom they pierced." And when evening had come, because it was the preparation day, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Ramathaim, a prominent council member, who was himself waiting for the reign of Elohim, came, boldly went in to Pilate and asked for the body of Yahushua. But Pilate wondered whether he was already dead. So summoning the captain, he asked him if he was already dead. And when he learned this from the captain, he gave the body to Joseph. And he, having bought fine linen, took him down and wrapped him in the linen. And he laid him in a tomb which he had hewn out of the rock, and rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. And Miriam from Magdala and Miriam the mother of Joseph saw where he was laid. And see, a man named Joseph, a council member, a good and righteous man. He was not agreeing with their counsel indeed, from Ramathaim, a city of the Yehudim, who himself was also waiting for the reign of Elohim. He, going to Pilate, asked for the body of Yahushua, and taking it down he wrapped it in linen, and laid it in a tomb hewn out of the rock, where no one was yet laid. And it was preparation day, and the Sabbath was approaching. And the woman who had come with him from Galilee followed after, and saw the tomb, and how his body was laid. And having returned, they prepared spices and perfumes, and they rested on the Sabbath according to the command. And after this, Yosef of Ramathaim, being a taught one of Yahushua, but secretly, for fear of the Yehudim, asked Pilate that he might take the body of Yahushua, and Pilate gave permission. Therefore he came and took the body of Yahushua. And Nachdimon, who at first came to Yahushua by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds. Then they took the body of Yahushua and bound it in linen wrappings with the spices, as was the habit of the Yehudim for burial. And at the place where he was impaled there was a garden, and in the garden a fresh tomb in which no one had yet been laid. There then, because of the preparation day of the Yehudim, they laid Yahushua, because the tomb was near. For as Yonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the stomach of the great fish, so shall the Son of Adam be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And Yahushua cried out again with a loud voice, and gave up his spirit. And see, the veil of the dwelling place was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth was shaken, and the rocks were split, and the tombs were opened, and many bodies of the set-apart ones who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs, after his resurrection, they went into the set-apart city, and appeared to many. And you shall know that I am Yahweh, when I open your burial sites, my people, and bring you up from your burial sites. And I shall put my spirit in you, and you shall live, and I shall settle you in your own land. And you shall know that I, Yahweh, have spoken, and I have done it, declares Yahweh. But late in the Sabbath, as it was dawning into day 1 of the week, Miriam from Magdala and the other Miriam came to see the tomb. And see, there was a great earthquake, for a messenger of Yahweh came down out of heaven, and came and rolled back the stone from the door, and sat on it. And his appearance was like lightning, and his garments as white as snow. And the guards trembled for fear of him, and became like dead men. And the messenger responding said to the woman, Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Yahushua, who was impaled. He is not here, for he was raised, as he said. Come, see the place where the Master lay. And go quickly, say to his taught ones, that he was raised from the dead, and see, he is going before you to Galilee. There you shall see him. See, I have told you. And they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy, and ran to report to his taught ones. And as they were going to report to his taught ones, see, Yahushua met them, saying, Greetings. And they came and held him by the feet, and did bow to him. Then Yahushua said to them, Do not be afraid. Go, report to my brothers, to go to Galilee, and they shall see me there. And when the Sabbath was past, Miriam from Magdala, and Miriam the mother of Yaakov, and Shalomah brought spices to go and anoint him. And very early on day 1 of the week they came to the tomb when the sun had risen. And they said among themselves, Who shall roll away the stone from the entrance of the tomb for us? And looking up, they saw that the stone had been rolled away, for it was extremely large. And having entered into the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right, wearing a white robe, and they were greatly astonished. And he said to them, Do not be much astonished. You seek Yahushua of Nazareth, who was impaled. He was raised, he is not here. See, the place where they laid him. And go, say to his taught ones and Kepha, that he is going before you into Galilee. You shall see him there as he said to you. And they went out and fled from the tomb, and were trembling and bewildered, and they spoke to no one, for they were afraid. But on day 1 of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared. And they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. And having entered, they did not find the body of the Master Yahushua. And it came to be, as they were perplexed about this, that see, 2 men stood by them in glittering garments. And becoming frightened, and bowing their faces to the earth, these said to them, Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but has been raised up. Remember how he spoke to you when he was still in Galilee, saying, The Son of Adam has to be delivered into the hands of sinners, and be impaled, and the 3rd day rise again. And they remembered his words, and having returned from the tomb, they reported all this to the 11 and to all the rest. And it was Miriam from Magdala, and Johanna, and Miriam the mother of Yaakov, and the rest with them, who told this to the emissaries. And their words appeared to them to be nonsense, and they did not believe them. But Kepha arose and ran to the tomb, and stooping down, he saw the linen wrappings lying by themselves. And he went away home, marveling at what took place. And on day 1 of the week, Miriam from Magdala came early to the tomb, while it was still dark, and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and came to Shimon Kepha, and to the other taught one whom Yahushua loved, and said to them, They have taken the Master out of the tomb, and we do not know where they laid him. Then Kepha and the other taught one went out, and they were going to the tomb. And the 2 were running together, but the other taught one outran Kepha and came to the tomb first. And stooping down, he saw the linen wrappings, but he did not go in. Then Shimon Kepha came, following him, and went into the tomb. And he saw the linen wrappings lying, and the cloth which had been on his head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but folded up in a place by itself. So then the other taught one, who came to the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed, for they did not yet know the scripture that he has to rise again from the dead. Therefore the taught ones went away again by themselves. And having risen early on the 1st day of the week, he appeared first to Miriam from Magdala, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. She went and reported to those who had been with him, mourning and weeping. And when they heard that he was alive, and had been seen by her, they did not believe. But Miriam was standing outside by the tomb weeping. Then as she wept, she stooped down to the tomb, and saw 2 messengers in white sitting, one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Yahushua had been laid. And they said to her, Woman, why do you weep? She said to them, Because they took away my master, and I do not know where they laid him. And having said this, she turned around and saw Yahushua standing, but she did not know that it was Yahushua. Yahushua said to her, Woman, why do you weep? Whom do you seek? Thinking he was the gardener, she said to him, Master, if you have carried him away, say to me where you put him, and I shall take him away. Yahushua said to her, Miriam. She turned and said to him, Rabboni, which means teacher. Yahushua said to her, Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my Elohim and your Elohim. Miriam from Magdala came announcing to the taught ones that she had seen the Master, and that he had told her this. And while they were going, see, some of the watch, having gone into the city, reported to the chief priests all that took place. And when they came together with the elders, and taken counsel, they gave enough silver to the soldiers, saying, Say that his taught ones came at night and stole him away while we slept. And if this should be reported to the governor, we shall win him over and keep you out of trouble. And having taken the silver, they did as they were instructed. And this account was widely spread among the Yehudim to this day. And after this he appeared in another form to 2 of them as they walked and went into a field. And they went and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe them either. And see, 2 of them were going that same day to a village called Emmaus, which was 60 stadia from Jerusalem. And they were talking to each other of all this which had taken place. And it came to be, as they were talking and reasoning, that Yahushua himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were restrained, so that they did not know him. And he said to them, What are these words you are exchanging with each other as you are walking? And you are sad. And the one, whose name was Cleophas, answering, said to him, Are you the lone visitor in Jerusalem, who does not know what took place in it these days? And he said to them, What? And they said to him, Concerning Yahushua of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before Elohim and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death, and impaled him. We, however, were expecting that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. But besides all this, today is the third day since these matters took place. But certain women of ours, who arrived at the tomb early, also astonished us. When they did not find his body, they came saying that they had also seen a vision of messengers who said he was alive. And some of those with us went to the tomb and found it, as also the woman had said, but they did not see him. And he said to them, O thoughtless ones, and slow of heart to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary for the Messiah to suffer these and to enter into his esteem? And beginning at Moshe and all the prophets, he was explaining to them in all the scriptures the matters concerning himself. And they approached the village where they were going, and he seemed to be going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, Stay with us, for it is toward evening, and the day has declined. And he went in to stay with them. And it came to be, when he sat at the table with them, having taken the bread, he blessed, and having broken, he was giving it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. And they said to each other, Was not our heart burning within us as he was speaking to us on the way, and as he was opening the scriptures to us? And rising up that same hour, they returned to Jerusalem, and found the 11 and those who were with them gathered together, saying, The Master was truly raised, and has appeared to Shimon. And they related what took place on the way, and how he was recognized by them in the breaking of the bread. And the 11 taught ones went away into Galilee, to the mountain which Yahushua had appointed for them. And when they saw him, they bowed to him, but some doubted. And Yahushua came up and spoke to them, saying, All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make taught ones of all the nations, immersing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the set-apart Spirit, teaching them to guard all that I have commanded you. And see, I am with you always, until the end of the age. Amen. Later he appeared to the 11 as they sat at the table, and he reproached their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they did not believe those who had seen him after he was raised. And he said to them, Go into all the world and proclaim the good news to every creature. He who has believed and has been immersed shall be saved, but he who has not believed shall be condemned. And these signs shall accompany the ones who believe. In my name they shall cast out demons, they shall speak with renewed tongues, they shall take up snakes, and if they drink any deadly drink it shall by no means hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall get well. Then indeed, after the Master had spoken to them, he was received up into the heaven, and sat down at the right hand of Elohim. And they went out and proclaimed it everywhere, while the Master worked with them, and confirmed the word through the accompanying signs. Amen. When therefore it was evening on that day, day 1 of the week, and when the doors were shut where the taught ones met, for fear of the Yehudim, Yahushua came and stood in the midst and said to them, Peace to you. And having said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The taught ones therefore rejoiced when they saw the Master. Then Yahushua said to them again, Peace to you. As the Father has sent me, I also send you. And having said this, he breathed on them and said to them, Receive the set-apart Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they have been retained.